Good morning. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to the second day, the final day of our annual event. And judging by the number of bums on seats, I can see that last night was a real party, huh? Where are the scientists? Are they sleeping? Well, hopefully they'll be joining us soon. I think some of them are being shuttled here. So we're going to start the program anyway so that we do not fall behind. But yesterday's event, last night's launches were a huge success. I know that the FemBioBiz competition was launched really successfully. And there was also the signing of the MOU between SANBio and the seeding lab. So that's really just progress. And I'm really inspired by these steps because obviously when we invest in the infrastructure of our industry, and I say our because I'm starting to feel like one of y'all now. So coming up in today's events, we're going to be doing a number of things. But first and foremost, we'll have a few of our speakers just come up and share some things with us. Firstly, we'll be hearing from Ms. V. Tangawamira, who will be basically talking to us about the program achievements and lessons learned in the process. Of course, she's representing the BioFisa 2 program. So we're going to hear from her first, and then thereafter, she'll introduce Mr. Hilary Lindy, who is also, well, he's from the SACE 2 program management office in Namibia. So he'll be talking to us about the SACE 2 program challenge fund. And thereafter, we'll hear it from Professor Michael Wallag, who will be talking to us about the founder's story and how it's okay to fail. So we heard yesterday that the hallmark of a true entrepreneur is someone who's able to fail repeatedly and still persevere on with the same level of enthusiasm. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, could you help me please give a warm welcome to Ms. Svi Tangawamira, please, and thank you. We hugged this morning. I'm milking it for all it's worth.
Thanks, Masishava. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about our progress to date. And we started this program, the BioFisa program, in 2015. And the aim of this program is to support what is called the Southern Africa Network for Biosciences. So the Southern Africa Network for Biosciences is an initiative from NEPAD to facilitate collaboration and innovation in the SADC region, mainly in the health and nutrition space. So since 2005, the network was established, and from 2009, it was funded by the government of Finland as well as the government of South Africa and some SADC member states. And there was a program, BioFisa 1, that was implemented for 4 years between 2009 until 2011 or 12 there. And that phase of the program ended. And then the second phase, which is what we are now implementing, started in 2015. If we can go to the next slide, please. So we're covering 13 countries, and the budget for the program is about 6.6 million euros, funded by the government of Finland as well as the government of South Africa. Oh, there's a clicker. Oh, wow. All right. Okay, thanks. The duration of the program is 4 years. We're actually supposed to end it in February 2019, but because we still had some funding because of the exchange rate gains, we were able then to extend it a bit further until December 2019. Okay, so what we do is we support 3 key result areas for the network. One is to establish a functional SANBio network, where we look at supporting people in networking events. We look at networking events like this, as well as international events. And we also support in terms of capacity building and entrepreneurship and technical skills. and we have invested quite significantly in supporting research and innovations to come out of universities and research institutions into the commercial space. So far, we've invested about 15 projects, but I wanted to tell you first what was our goal from 2015. When we started this project, we said, we want the SANBio network to be the best known network in biosciences in Africa. And we had specific targets. We had targets to get students and youth involved through the Student Ambassador Scheme. We had also experts that we thought should be involved in the network, and we aimed to have at least 100 experts registered on a platform that we created each year. At the same time, we wanted to have people follow us on social media and also engage with us on different platforms that we created, like the SANBio website, where people can get more information. So we had specific targets. And our key framework really was that we're looking at R&D, yes, but there's need for mentorship, there's need for entrepreneurship, culture and skills, there's need for funding, and also just getting people together to network. So that's what we were just aiming to do, to achieve our major goals. And our targets in other sectors was very simple. We wanted to invest in 5 flagship projects, meaning we invested about 4.5 million in those projects, and then 10 seed projects, meaning we invest about 1 million. I'm talking about rands, since this is an international community. So we had 10 seed projects earmarked, and at the end of it all, because we're in the biosciences space, we were very skeptical as to whether we'll get all the products that were being developed to market. So we thought, well, okay, maybe we'll have two products or 2 enterprises created at the end of this investment. And we also targeted to train about 300 people in the region in entrepreneurship and technical skills. And lastly, we thought this is a networking platform, so we should have at least 17 regional collaborations supported and made, and also 2 international collaborations. Sorry, if I can go back there. I mentioned there on the slide, you see there's a 50% women, because we intentionally say that across all these activities, we want to have half of the participants as women. So what did we achieve? We are almost close to 2019 now. So on our website now, we have over 20,000 visitors, meaning that there are people who are looking for information in the region and internationally who visit our site, which is double the targets that we actually thought we would attain. We have over 3,000 followers on Facebook. I mention these stats because the social media platform is very powerful to share information, particularly with this generation. And so for us, seeing that there are all these people who are linked to us on Facebook, it's a way of sharing information to different stakeholders in different places. So right now we're able to reach over 3,000 people on Facebook. And we have close to 300 experts in our expert database. So if you want to know who to collaborate with, if you want to know who some of the key experts are in the region, register on the expert database and engage with the relevant people. And we now have over 20 student ambassadors in 10 countries. We actually had targeted just 10 because we were very conservative. But we managed to get 20, and within that student ambassador scheme, there's actually more students. As an example, last year, we were able to train over 30 youth and students in the IKS systems in Botswana. And this year, just before the annual event, we had the business of clinical trials, where we had over 30 participants. And then we ask ourselves, are we the best known network in biosciences in Africa? I think you guys will have to answer that question for us. Our other achievements include that we have invested in 14 projects. We now like to call them enterprises because we're pushing all of them to commercialize and to be enterprises that have products that are on the market. And these cover 8 SADC countries. Remember, we're working in 13. There has not been much participation in some of the countries, like Seychelles, in terms of projects, and Mauritius, but we are doing as much as we can to involve these countries in other activities. And of these projects, 7 of them have actually started prototyping, and a number of them are scaling up production. So this is quite exciting for us. And we have over 25 million rand that we're investing in this projects or enterprises, as we like to call them now. And within the network, we have stakeholders of over 2,000 that we are able to reach, regional and international stakeholders, and like I said earlier, close to 300 experts in our database. I've mentioned already the stats on the student ambassadors, and another exciting event that we started is this SANBio scheme. Yesterday we launched the second season, and we are very excited that by doing so we are creating a network for women bio-entrepreneurs who are then able to share their experiences and also influence the girl child so that they can see the potential and opportunities in biosciences. Finally, in terms of collaboration, we have over 15 collaborations that we've supported and 1 international collaboration. So what have we learned over this couple of years? We've been implementing this program for just over 2 years. And the exciting thing is, I think as you've seen in this networking event, is that we have a caliber of scientists who are very interested to commercialize their products. And that's exciting. I think it's a good starting point. Why? Because if you are determined to achieve a certain thing, you will definitely go for it. So for us, this is key. And we think that by having these scientists and scientists like this, we are able to start creating a culture of entrepreneurship in the region. It's a slow start, I agree, but it is a start. And we also saw a very interesting thing. We saw that within one of the projects that we are supporting, there is potential to identify students at university level to take products that are being developed within research institutions to market. It's very exciting for us because usually we say the PI or the lead researcher or the professor will need to team up with somebody, or he himself is going to take this technology. But that's not always the case. And with projects that we are funding on the Smart Snack, you can talk to the guys. They are on the second stand right there at the back. And they will tell you of the model that they are creating to support students to take products to market. And then we also noticed that there is domestic resources available to support innovation and the commercialization of products from research institutions. I say this because we were able to work with the NCRC in Namibia to mobilize resources within countries to support and conduct calls together to support projects and to support teams from research institutions. And we did the same thing in Zimbabwe with ZimDef, and we did the same thing in Botswana with BIH. So you'll see if you go around the stands, at least for Botswana Innovation Hub, the projects that we're funding collaboratively, there's 2 of them that are exhibiting, and you can chat with those guys. And we also noticed yesterday that after constant searching, there's actually private investments that's available for people who want to take their technologies to market. So it's not all gloom like we usually paint it, but there are investments. And after my talk, there will be 2 programs that are going to present the opportunities that are coming up in terms of donor funding for innovations in the region. And again, very interesting. Usually we say scientists like to work in silos. That's what I knew when I started the program. But we realized that as we implemented this, people actually want to collaborate. We said to people, for you to access the grants that we are giving you, you needed to get a partner from a different country to be a recipient of the grant. If you were getting a seed grant, you would get, you need to partner with one country. If you were getting a flagship grant, you need to partner with 2 countries. And surprisingly, that happened, even from private sector. So there is really an interesting collaboration framework and culture, I think, that is being developed to help solve the challenges that we face here in Africa. So we learned some other interesting things, like, for instance, when we did technical and entrepreneurship skills training, we noticed that for most scientists, it was an eye-opener, as they actually said, for them to be taken through what is called the business model canvas in a proposal writing framework. For most people, they are used to writing research proposals, but they don't know how to actually write a proposal to take a product to market. And we think that this kind of training is very relevant in the region. We've trained, like I said, over 300, close to 400 people, the majority in using the business model canvas tool. And this has been quite successful, and I think it was quite needed in the proposal writing structures that we had. And we noticed that most people were very, very excited, and they were extremely satisfied with the training that we provided on entrepreneurship skills. And we continue to support the teams that we are funding, not only with commercialization skills, but also project management and basic business planning and management skills as we are implementing this program. And then we also decided that aside from the entrepreneurship skills, it's quite important that people gain technical skills. So we collaborated with a number of institutions, including the SANBio nodes, to provide training to different regional participants on specific issues. So for instance, the university in Malawi, Luana, is very good in aquaculture, and they provide a training in aquaculture and are also providing the business training of aquaculture in the second training that they conduct. But we noticed, though, that a number of people didn't know that the program was supporting people in technical skills as well. So in our last year of implementation, meaning between now and next year, we are really going to gear up and create more awareness on the technical skills that the program is conducting in conjunction with different regional institutions. There's also a downside. I must say the positive and also the negatives. So on the negative side, we notice that there are very few things that are coming out of universities, particularly in the region. I say this because when we launched these applications, it was open to 13 regional countries. And for us, when we were now selecting products that were closer to prototyping, the majority were coming from South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Botswana. And the rest of the region are still at basic research level. So I think there's needs to do more at university level to push the researchers and to push professors and PIs to take their technologies further than they are doing now. And we also noticed that for the products that we had selected and some that didn't manage to go through our grant process, the guys had not really done much market research and market testing, so there was no link with the customers. And so when we are implementing now, one of our major things that we are trying to do is to ensure that the guys and the teams know the customers that they are trying to reach and really question their hypothesis on the customer and develop the relevant customers for the products that they have. And in terms of the regulatory framework, some of our projects were delayed by over 12 months, by a year. So there is need for harmonization in the region. We said this last year, and we say it again, and we hope that at NEPAD level, they will take this up, especially for IVDs, to ensure that progress is not hindered by regulation. And the need for multidisciplinary teams, this was actually mentioned yesterday by the panelists of investors that spoke, and the need also to foster entrepreneurship at university level, and the need to link up commercial partners with researchers. I think that is crucial, especially if we are going to be doing demand-based research. What did we not do? What could we not achieve? There's one big thing that we tried, and we tried again, but it didn't work. We tried to develop a framework for people to share equipment, and we are still trying, I must say. And we hope that with the link now with Seeding Labs, that SANBio will be able to come up with a framework that will allow people to share equipment in the region. And at the end of it all, I just wanted to mention to you that the BioVisa program is going to be ending next year in December. And we hope that what we've started will not end here. We hope that some other donors will take part. We hope that some private investors or companies will also support the enterprises that we've started supporting or de-risking. And we will have one final event next year in July to just tell you what has happened, again, the lessons we've learned, and to share our experiences. But now, before I conclude my talk, I have two other talks that I wanted to bring up. The first is from a professor at the University of Zimbabwe who is doing amazing research in the region. And the second is from an entrepreneur who has also provided or has developed a very interesting technology. He is going to pitch later, but I thought, let these guys talk to you, and you will see some of the things that are coming out of Africa. Because yesterday, I think we heard a lot of what is happening in the ecosystem, and today the thrust is to really see what kind of startups, what kind of enterprises, and what kind of research is happening in the region. So I'll call upon Professor Dexter and Gift, if you can come up and just sit here for a bit.
Good morning. I think I'll wait for the guys to put that up. So I've got about 10 minutes. I'll try to speak really, really fast. I'll try not to be excited about what I'm doing, which is really hard most of the time. But I'll try my level best. So my name is Dexter Tabare. I'm from the University of Zimbabwe. I'm not sure if we're really doing amazing work, but there are some things that we're doing which I wish to share with you in the few minutes. So I'm not sure how many of you have watched that movie. It's called Blade. Wesley Snipes, 100% human being, 100% vampire. But I'll talk about him at some other point. So basically, when I come to stage, I like to relax. So there's some rituals I need to do. Like, first of all, I have to remind myself to smile at everyone. So there, consider myself to have smiled at you, and then greet you and say hello, and expect you to greet me back. And if you don't threaten you that I'm a toxicologist, I will poison you. And then also just all protocols observed. So I want to talk about what I've termed from poison to medicine, the Buffon story, which is some work that we've been doing for quite a number of years. So just to start off with, to put the story into context, a poison is defined from the dictionary as a substance that is harmful or lethal to a living organism. Like, duh, yes, Dexter, we know that. It will make sense. A medicine is defined as a substance which specifically promotes healing when ingested or consumed in some way. A question mark, my title had a question mark. It talks about doubt or uncertainty, which means we're not yet there. There are still some gray areas that we're looking at. And then a story is a sequence of real or fictional events or any account of such a sequence. But today I'll be talking about real things, what we've been doing. So being a teacher, I like having objectives so that we can know exactly what we want to achieve by the end of the talk. And basically, I want to give an overview of the research that my group has been doing over the past few years in an endeavor to come up with a, in quotes, registrable complementary medicine in line with the regulations in Zimbabwe, and hopefully push it elsewhere. So in terms of my background, I've come from a largely clinical toxicology background. I'm a pharmacist and a clinical toxicologist, so most of my work in the past has been to do with poisoning and poisons and people being poisoned and poisons and people being poisoned, and I was not involved in poisoning any of those people. So during my PhD, I came across this baby. I think those who are in natural products research know her. Her name is Buffon distica, beautiful plant, which unfortunately is quite poisonous. It's a non-poison, has been used as an arrow poison by the San people. In fact, Buffon, it's a compound word from the Greek, boo and cattle, meaning cattle killer. Also used as a fish poison. And apparently people, you hunt wild pigs. You know, they put, I don't know, some concoction, the wild pigs come, they eat, then they sleep, and then once they're sleeping, they come and slaughter the poor pigs. And then in terms of exposures, there's been lots of literature of people who have been poisoned after ingesting this plant for medicinal purposes. It is used in South Africa. It's also used in Zimbabwe, including some fatalities. But also in Zimbabwe, it is used recreationally. It's such a powerful hallucinogenic that one guy was found with his trousers, you know, he folded it all the way up. And he was walking like this, you know, like somebody walks when the river is full. So somebody asked him, why are you walking like that? And he says, oh, the river is full. And this was in the middle of the street in the city with no river. So it's auditory hallucinations, tactile hallucinations, visual hallucinations, just hallucinating throughout. So from our definition, because this plant causes harm, it's defined as a poison. Do we agree? If you don't have poison, do we agree? Okay. So an interesting thing is there's a Greek physician called Paracelsus, and he said this statement, which is a very important statement for anyone who has done pharmacology or toxicology, that all substances are poisons. There is none which is not a poison. The dose differentiates between a poison and a remedy. I get a headache, I take 2 paracetamol tablets, I'm fine. I take 50 paracetamol tablets or 100 paracetamol tablets, I'm dead. But it's the same compound, just a different dose. So that's what basically it is. So this brings me now to the Blade story. So in Blade, this guy, he's a vampire who is 100% vampire, but also 100% human being. So from movies, vampires can't exist when there is sunlight, isn't it? Because something happens and they start melting, and then they're dead, and garlic and all those other things. But then this guy can actually walk in the sun. But at the same time, he's got the strength of a vampire. So he's got the best of both worlds, the strength of a vampire, but also being able to move as a human being. And I like to think of myself like that. So this is Dexter. I'm a pharmacist. That's my background, so I understand about the beneficial use of medicines. But I'm also a toxicologist. Like, that's the vampire side, the dangerous side. So because of that, I tried to Photoshop myself in there. So some questions came to mind. And then we said, okay, so in terms of toxicology and toxicity, how exactly does Buffon distica exhibit its toxicology? And is it possible to then play around with the dose to come up with pharmacological or medicinal uses that could be of importance? And that's what we basically started doing, and perhaps ultimately come up with a medicine. So our first stop was to understand the toxicology and enter Dexter, the toxicologist. That's the vampire side of me. And then we did simple acute toxicity studies. We're able, and as well as chronic toxicity studies, as well as some genotoxicity studies. And basically, we were able to, based on our toxicity studies, speculate or hypothesize on the possible mechanism of toxicity. One of the interesting things we found was when you gave these rats a toxic dose of the plant, they moved backwards, This is referred to as retropulsion. And retropulsion normally points to hallucinations. The moment you say hallucinations, the biologists in here think of two neurotransmitters, two chemicals. You think of serotonin and you think of dopamine. And the moment you think of serotonin, it means lots of possibilities from a pharmacological perspective. So we just decided to test our hypothesis by using a centrally acting serotonin antagonist, and that was our hypothesis. So we hypothesized that if you've got buffon poisoning, there's a serotonin overdrive, you give an antagonist, toxicity must go down. And Eureka, we're excited about it, except that we had our clothes on. And we then went forward and then published something about it. So then the pharmacologist inside me then came up. If the result of toxicity is because you've got this chemical called serotonin going up to in large quantities, it must mean that if we used smaller doses, we should be able to modulate it and come up with pharmacological activity. So we then did a large battery of tests looking at issues to do with anxiety, depression, tropic activity, autonomic nervous system activity, and we got some exciting results, some of which we've published. Anti-anxiety, we found some effects on the heart, but then others we are just shh about it until we become billionaires and things like that. So we're happy with the toxicology, we're happy with the pharmacology, but now there's a problem. You know, these plants, normally there's no way of giving a proper dose because we do not have, marker substances to say if you're giving 500 milligrams, how do you assure it's always 500 milligrams all the time? So we had to go into the lab to do a bit of chemistry. I got some fellowship to go to Botswana to be taught by the organic chemists on how to isolate compounds and do interesting, fascinating things and get things like that, which if you don't understand, don't worry, I don't understand them either. And then at the end of about 2 tours to the university, we had extracted or isolated some compounds which we thought we could use as marker substances. And I was quite excited because I was now a quasi-chemist as well, because I actually isolated something which was last isolated 100 years ago. I felt like a Nobel Prize candidate. Like it was, yeah. So quickly, we realized that we could not move forward if we didn't have some basic equipment. And courtesy of the government of Zimbabwe through the ZimDef program, after the minister had an opportunity to speak with me, and I was telling him what I'm telling you, I got a bit of big grant to get some equipment, a good LCMS, QTOF, it was cool, a benchtop NMR system, FTIR, as well as some other small equipment. And then with that, we could do a number of things. You see, these plants are from all over the country. So what's to say if we took the plants from Marondera, would they be the same as the ones from Inyanga? So now that we had this equipment, we could take plants from different places and then compare to see if the alkaloidal levels were the same, which is something that we've been working on. So we needed people from agriculture now, because if we want to make this thing large scale, we have to understand how the conditions, isn't it, will affect the production of the alkaloidal compounds, which we believe are the ones which are responsible for the activities that we found. And we had an MSc student that we co-supervised. We had very interesting results. So where are we now? Well, because we're not really experts at formulation, we do teach students about that. So we had to find an industry partner. So we've got a company called Zim Farm. One of the directors was my classmate. And I always tell him I used to beat you in class, although now he's the director of the company. And then they helped us to do some formulation studies. And if you see on your, does this thing have a pointer? Okay, the pointer is not working. On the left up there, that's the final formulation that we have. We had played around with tablets as well. Not too happy about them, but yeah. So what's the plan? The plan is to be able to register a complementary medicine. Perhaps we have huge plantations, who knows? Start doing some clinical trials, which are pretty rare for complementary medicine. And then get a Nobel Prize, become a billionaire. And then we have several other products which we are working on other plants using the same protocol, because we use this as a blueprint. So in conclusion, the story is still a question, really. Because, we don't know what's going to happen. But for all you know, next time you see me, it might be, and Nobel Prize for Physiology, Dexter Tabare, and I'll be like, oh yeah. And then who knows, the Forbes top 10 and blah, blah. Okay, so those are my acknowledgements. I would like to thank my daughter and my wife for allowing me to come here. If they say you're not going anywhere, I get stuck at home. So thank you very much. Asante sana. Asante sana. Zimbabweans know what I'm talking about. And may God bless you all. Thank you.
Good morning. So maybe I might just start as we wait for the slides to come up. So my name is Gift Ghana, and I'm the co-founder of a startup based in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe called Dr. Cadex. So my journey as an entrepreneur started about 10 years ago. So I finished my undergraduate in 2006 and then started my career in the academia. So I started on a master's and as a teaching assistant. But that was a difficult time for our country, and I think I got frustrated by the conditions. Then I said, you know what, let me determine my destiny. And I then set off into the world of entrepreneurship. So I've been working for the past several years as an app developer, and I've developed a number of apps that have gotten over 12 million downloads from users around the world. So one of those apps has been a medical-related app, which ultimately got an Opera Top Apps Award. And another application that I developed was based on image recognition technology. So the idea there is some snobs like me like to do bird watching, you know, just go out and admire the beauty of birds. And one of the challenges that I myself found and others find is identifying particular species of birds. So I then thought to myself, I came across an app, maybe some of you are familiar with it, called SoundHound. So, and SoundHound is an app that you can record a song while it's playing, and you tell you what the song is. And I thought to myself, if technology has gotten to that stage, is it not possible to actually do the same for birds? So I started working on that technology, and thanks to support from Nokia and Microsoft and Auto University, I was able to develop this, this application. And then, so that was in 2013. And then 2 years later, I then said, okay, we can actually maybe add another feature of being able to take a photo of a bird and be able to do image recognition, and it can show you the results. So those are screenshots of that particular function where, you know, somebody has taken a photo of a bird and the system is able to predict what that bird is. And, you know, so those are some of the good results where it actually got it right. Fast forward to 2016. I was got engaged to work as a consultant with a company based in Zimbabwe that does some work for clients in Europe. So basically in helping these companies who are developing their own innovative technologies to get grant funding from the European Commission to fund their research. So one of the companies that I worked, or rather it was a consortium of industry and research organizations. They were working on the problem of detecting when breast cancer starts to spread from the breast to other parts of the body, a process called metastasis. So in the current procedures, when you want to do that, to determine that, typically the patient has to go through a biopsy, which is basically surgery, to look at what are called sentinel lymph nodes. So this is a process that is, one, costly because of the various medical experts that are involved for that, the anesthetists, the surgeons, and sometimes there are adverse reactions to some of the drugs that are used to that. So this consortium was saying that, can we not develop a minimally invasive technique that will be able to do that? So they struggled to find someone who will be able to translate the technology, the photonics technology, and package into a business plan. And 2 weeks before the deadline, they somehow found me. So I then helped them to put up their proposal, and it got funded for about 4 million euros. But whilst I was working on that proposal, I then realized that in the initial diagnosis for breast cancer using mammography, so that's a medical imaging technique, there are also high error rates in that process. And then I thought to myself, is this not essentially an image recognition technology that I can apply, the technology that I developed for beds? So that's an image for beds, and we've got an image of a mammogram. Can we not apply the same technology to this? Okay, I think I jumped. Okay, so I then said, let me build a team. So I had a friend who is a diagnostic radiographer, so I said, no, can we not work together on this particular problem of applying image recognition technology to what? To medical images. So I then put together a team to help me that, so also got legal people, finance people, so that we'll be able to run on this project. And what we then came up with is we then looked at that problem where we have, on one hand, you've got the issue of diagnostic accuracy. So some studies have been done to quantify that, and it has been seen that in 30% of the cases, the diagnosis on medical images is actually incorrect. So in most of those cases, though, it's not really serious, but in maybe about 2% or so, the misdiagnosis is of a serious nature that it can lead to serious complications like, the patient getting handicapped or sometimes even death. But when you look, those figures are global figures. But when you look into Africa, you also realize that there's another problem where there's a serious shortage of radiologists, where the experts, the medical experts will look at these medical images. And you look, for example, the case of Zimbabwe, we've got only 17 radiologists to cater for the whole population of 16 million. 16 of them are based in Harare, the capital, and just one in Bulawayo, the second city. So that means the rest of the country is not served. And all of these are working in the private sector. None of them are in the government, the public hospitals that serve the majority of the population. So these are the two big issues that we said, can we not address? So our solution has been to create a software application that is able to analyze medical images. Okay, are we able to get this video playing? If you can help me there. Okay, so this is an easy-to-use application where the user is able to select an image, a medical image, and it will be uploaded to our system. Our system will then analyze it automatically with no additional user intervention, and after a few seconds, it will be able to present a diagnostic prediction. And it will also be able to highlight on the image where it's seeing signs of disease, with the red areas indicating where there are significant patterns of the disease. So in this case, it was on that right-hand side. So we have developed our system. It's currently working for a number of diseases, with the most advanced prototype being for TB diagnosis. And we are getting accuracy rates in the range of 84 to 88% for 6 diseases: TB, pneumonia, enlarged heart, breast cancer, and others. So these tests, we have just done them, the standalone tests on the system itself. And the next step for us is to do studies with actual doctors, where we now compare what is their accuracy when they are reviewing the images by themselves, and when they use our system, can we actually improve that accuracy? And we are planning to have our first pilot study between April and May of this year. So our technology is working on, our solution is based on a technology called deep learning, which is a computer system that simulates how the human brain works in perceiving patterns in images. So in this case, like we showed in the demo video in the previous slide, is that you can give the system an image and it will then give you a diagnostic prediction. And when you look at the market size, it's immense. So each year, about 450 million patients undergo medical images each year. And when you look at the, in terms of monetary figures, In 2016, the market size for AI in medical image was estimated at 190 million, but that's set to grow to $2.5 billion by 2014, which is a very large annual growth rate of about 40%. So with the developments that we are doing, we see ourselves as well positioned to contribute and also benefit from this growth. So our revenue model will be based upon, providing our solution to hospitals and medical imaging centers, whom will bill for each image that they submit to us for analysis. And we have talked to a number of our potential partners, and with some of them we've actually now MOUs. So we have talked to the Ministry of Health in Zimbabwe to try to use some of the data that they already have from our clinical trials. We've talked to other partners to work with us in doing the clinical trials. And there is a manufacturer called Pristem, whom we're engaging them to see if we can integrate our software into their X-ray machines. So those are some of the partners that we are looking at. So from now going on forward, what is our plan? So essentially what we need to do right now is to validate that our solution with real doctors. So that is what we are looking at in the next 12 months, doing a series of clinical studies to validate our system. And this needs money, which is where we are looking for about $430,000 to run these studies, plus also do the final development work to have our system really ready for for production use. And our immediate funding requirements are at about $25,000 to run our initial pilot studies. And we are also looking for developing other strategic partnerships, looking for healthcare providers who can provide us with more images, collaborate with us during the clinical trials, and also other imaging equipment manufacturers so that we can integrate our solution into their equipment, which will also give them additional, be able to have them deliver more additional value to customers of their equipment. So we are also thinking of money as business people, and we see a huge potential from the market that I just talked about. And we are seeing that maybe by the 5 years from now, we will actually be able to reach revenues of $6 million, and by then would have been able to impact, at least 5 million patients around the world with our solution. So when you look at the problem that we highlighted, that there's a scarcity of radiologists, one thought would be to say, what is it that is needed for us to have enough radiologists? And you see that there is a lot of money that is required to train enough radiologists. So for us to get from the current level of about 10,000 radiologists across all of Africa, we need to go to about 130,000 radiologists, which is a 13 times increase for us to reach the US levels. And basically you see that the money for that is just not there, which is why the radiologists are not there in the first instance. On the other hand, we are trying to develop a solution that will be able to augment the capacity of the existing doctors. And for that, we are requiring an investment of about a total of $1.2 million. So when you look at that, you realize that the solution that we are developing is actually a great investment from both a financial perspective and a social impact perspective. So our call to you is that invest in us or partner with us and let us help improve healthcare and save lives together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call on two gentlemen to come join us on the stage. First and foremost, I'd like to invite to talk to us about the founder story and just a very powerful message that it is okay to fail. Please, could I ask Professor, no, please, no, excuse me. Professor Michael Wallach will be giving us this talk straight after this, before we get into our first networking session. But first, Mr. Hilary Lindy, where are you seated, Mr. Hilary Lindy? A round of applause for Mr. Hilary Lindy, thank you very much. So he's from SAIS 2 Program Management Office, the office in Namibia. And to join him on the stage, I'd like to call on Cyril Lombard, who is a consultant at the GIZ. A round of applause for him as he makes his way up, please. And, okay, you both prefer to sit? Fantastic. All right, please join us at the platform. Let me sort you out here. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here and represent the Size 2 program, and I would really like to thank both SANBio and Biosciences teams for inviting Size 2 here to present what we have to offer. It's also nice to be here because it's almost coming back where I used to be, because 12 years ago I was based here and we were working on setting up the Biosciences 1 together with the NEPAD team, and obviously things have changed a lot then, and we are progressing quite well towards completely maybe different agenda on innovation than it was 12 years ago. So my name is Ilari Lindi and I work for SIZE program. I'm based in Windhoek, where the program office is. We are also a second stage of the program, so there was a program called SIZE 1 before us, and it lasted about 5 years, and we have just recently taken over of that legacy, and we are now 6 months in operation, and we are ready to launch actually our innovation fund and forthcoming call. So it is in that capacity that I'm here to give you a small sneak preview on what's coming up and what's going to happen within the next month during the March when we are launching the call. So looking a little bit what SIZE is as a program. Let me take this off. What SIZE is as a program is it's a little bit different than Biosciences. First of all, because SIZE is a program that's very close to the market. So we are not necessarily looking to fund and to support research. We're not looking to fund basic research, but we are also not looking to do research for the research sake and research which results might be somewhere close to the horizon. It's more of the implementation. In many ways, it's important to look at the implementation because it really is the final frontier on many aspects when we talk about innovation. We have a lot of great strategies, we have a lot of great policies, but implementation is the final bottleneck. And often when we think about innovation, it's also something that scares us a little bit, and we are afraid of failure and so forth. So SIZE is really trying to patch this particular bottleneck. We also see that SIZE is something that is based on the idea of learning by doing, and learning by doing meaning that you can fail when you implement, but as long as you implement, we see that that is valuable. And it's also about regional markets and regional collaboration, and that's why the SIZE as a program, we are backed by several governments who are operating in the SADC region. The major donor is still the government of Finland, but we also have the governments of South Africa, government of Namibia, government of Botswana, Zambia, as well as Tanzania, who is supporting the program. In addition, we have support from SADC Secretariat, which means that we would like to portray SIZE as a truly regional program covering all SADC countries. We also see that a program like this needs to have a home base somewhere, and it's because it is financed and supported by governments. We also have partner organizations that are located in each 5 size partner countries. So each country of these have a focal point that are supporting the implementation of size, but who also act as a potential source of information for the bidders who are interested about. So size in the end, it really is about connecting innovation ecosystems within the region, whether we are talking about ecosystems that are operating and facilitating the innovation in particular sectors, or whether these are ecosystems that have geographical space. We are also really trying to look more on enterprises and stronger enterprises, and especially with focus on early stage enterprises. So we are looking businesses that are in startup phase, growth phase, that are less than 3 years of age. And finally, we are also trying to understand better that how can we bring services, products, or processes that are either new or improved to that type of a population who might be socially, economically, or other reasons excluded from benefiting of innovations. Our approach is very much on investing in local champions. So we really are looking the players who have already been there and who are also ready to take a next step, either as an entrepreneur or as an innovation support organization, who already have the network and who can say that, you know, I can be and I can act as a benchmark to my peers. Trans-regional connections, we also see the value when you look at, for example, small markets in some of the member states, that it does really make sense to collaborate across the border and see that perhaps an opportunity is around corner, but you just have to cross the border. And we are also aware of the fact that it's not easy within this region. It's not easy in Europe, and it certainly is not easy globally, but we are ready to take that challenge. And then finally, really investing on practical activities. So the way size will be implemented is through 3 components. We have Innovation Fund, which is going to be in operation for the next 4 years, and we will have 3 calls with 3 separate windows, which I will present you a little bit after this. We also have a capacity building and networking activities, which are really targeting to those players who are able to secure size grant. And we are also supporting those players who are interested to secure size grant, so they can maybe connect to those who will be the winners through networking and joint activities. And finally, we also see that the knowledge plays a role in this field. So anyone who will get a grant from size has to be able to understand that why is it worthwhile to implement with the rigorous approach that actually documents and packages the learnings while doing and then sharing it regionally. So Size Innovation Fund, a short description of the objectives. So we really are looking validation and replication of already existing products, processes, or services. So these have to be at the level of a concept or a prototype, but waiting for a proof of validation. SIZE is going to support its activities through projects. So it has to be a market validation activity, for example, or replication of existing good practice in other new markets. We won't be taking any equity of our activities, and we are also seeing that from SIZE monies, we are not really going to support heavy investments on infrastructures or acquiring equipment. It really is practical activities, learning by doing. We have 3 windows. One window is for knowledge, one window is for enterprise, and one window is for inclusive innovation activities. Each window has a different cap of the size grant, so we are expecting to provide up to a certain amount of funding, which also requires matching resources from the applicants. We are also seeing that we would like to support projects that are not necessarily coming out of the blue, but can be also already sponsored and supported by other donors or governments or other type of sources. So SAIS in many ways is a program that is looking to match and to also complement already existing activities. Beneficiaries, we are looking in the window 1, it's mainly research, academia, those players who have capabilities and knowledge to advise governments or other innovation actors in the field of designing and implementing innovation policies. And we are also looking in this window in particular activities that are supporting entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial ecosystems. Second window, we see that while our focus will be on startups and early stage enterprises, they also need to be supported. So here, the funds will be challenged to organizations like incubators, accelerators, could be a tech transfer office in university, who brings together 3, 4 startup projects and apply funding jointly as a consortium. Finally, the last window of inclusive, again, we are here looking at different type of markets. So excluded parts of the population who may live with less than $3 a day, less than $6 a day, or may be lacking, for example, sustainable service deliveries from the government or from the private sector. And here again, we are looking for teams that are actually able to bring entrepreneurs and early stage enterprises into the field of SAIS grant. Project duration, anything from 12 to 24 months. We see that the market validation, especially on the window 2, can be done within 18, but may also require 24 months. That's why also the purse on window 2 is larger than potentially in the other windows. So looking a little bit the windows themselves, we see that the innovation, not only in SADC, but everywhere in the world is changing. And it's very much based on the partnerships and understanding how do the actors can come together within the different ecosystems. So on the first window, we can support, for example, activities that are looking to understand better how do the innovation ecosystems operate and work within the cities, say in the city of Windhoek or a city in Johannesburg. Second window, we really are trying to understand that can early stage enterprises take that step together with their incubators, their hubs, their labs, and their tech transfer organizations. And how do they move forward by having that concept and having that prototype and validating into the market with the outcome of a more robust business plan, as well as the technology that has been already tested with the users, and understanding then whether we can go forward or not, and with what kind of a financial support. And finally, then also window 3, how do we really develop innovations together with the communities? How do we understand the position where the users, consumers, as well as the partners who are operating in the base of the pyramid would like to have their products to be delivered? How would they be able to access them, and what would be, of course, the price for that kind of a service? Could it also be something that will never ever become financially viable, or the break even might be within the next 20 to 30 years and it actually becomes a public service? So size process, to sum up, existing prototype and concept, that's where we want to start. And when we are finishing the size project, we need to have understanding whether this particular product, service, process will fly in the market and how it will fly there and with what kind of a support. Size value proposition, we believe in a way it's unique. It is a regional program, and we want to make sure that whoever participates and puts forward a proposal to Size Innovation Fund grant is also in a position that can actually leverage that knowledge and those experiences to their peers and to their partners in the other part of the region. These activities should be incorporated into the application, and it's up to the consortiums themselves to decide on what level they need to be. We can expect a proposal that, for example, is organizing a regional hackathon in 5 or 6 different cities, or we can have a proposal where the regional element is simply incorporated by the means of having a study visit in one market and learning how particular service is operating in that part of the region. So, call for proposal is coming in March, so next 3 weeks. So I would very much like to invite you to follow us on different media and check out our website. Further information will be available there. We have a quite comprehensive package how to put the proposal forward, and we will be also doing the information days in each of the 5 size partner countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So we have about 15 minutes remaining before our first tea, coffee break and networking session. And we're going to hear it from 2 more speakers just before that. So I would just love to ask you to be cognizant of the time. I see you guys are scientists, but it seems like time is just an illusion. All right, sir, will you join us in the front, please? Thank you. A round of applause.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to SANBio and Biosciences for the opportunity to present the project here. Okay, so I'm presenting a project which has just been launched. It's managed by the GIZ ABS Capacity Development Initiative, and it started this month, and it's in a 6-month inception phase. And I just recently met with SANBio and Biosciences, and at short notice, this is why it's not on the program. There's some commonalities here, and so it's, I think it's important that this stakeholder group sees what's coming with this project. I won't delve into this for the process of keeping to the time, but this is just to show you the context of which the project is hosted. So the GIZ has this strategic approach to support the ABS compliance in Southern Africa and across Africa. And this project is hosted within that kind of ecosystem. And that's one thing that I've not heard much of in the last 2 days, is compliance with the Nagoya Protocol and the relevant legislation and regulations in the countries in Southern Africa. And this is a core focus of this project, is to support SMEs and other parties to comply with those regulations whilst innovating and growing their businesses. So let me just start with a summary of the project. It's got an awkward name. That's because some titles are sometimes composed by committees, and this one has suffered from that. But it's a 3 million Swiss franc project, of which 70% of the resources are to be directed at South Africa, because South Africa is the growth engine of the region, and because biotrade value chains stretch across Southern Africa, resources can also be spent on supporting SMEs and processes where the value chains reach into. The project will be managed by the GIZ ABS Capacity Development Initiative. They'll be employing a coordinator here in South Africa to do that. The project was approved in November last year, and the inception phase has just started. Let me just spend a bit of time explaining what the strategic approach is of the project. The project is divided into 3 components, each with 3 subcomponents, but basically to grow the sector and to support the sector to comply with the ABS legislation and regulations. The component 1 is technical assistance provided by the project and consultants, experts, expert organizations, to provide targeted services to the sector to help them overcome certain problems and bottlenecks for the sector to grow. Component 2 is financial assistance in the form of a grant facility to support innovation and grant anywhere along the value chain. And I'll come back to that later because that's a gap that has been identified by this project team. And the third component is to support the regulatory environment and improve regulatory environment and communication about lessons learned and the difficulties in complying with these legislations across South Africa, the region, and globally. So component 1 has 3 subcomponents, and the first one is market access. Those of you who know the challenges of developing new products from biological resources, in this case biotrade products, indigenous plant products, they suffer from specific market access regulations, like novel foods for the European Union. What we think is a acceptable food product here in Southern Africa is viewed as potentially toxic by regulators in the consuming large markets. So there's a component here to support SMEs and their support organizations to address those major bottlenecks. Subcomponent 2 is to provide resources to IPLCs. IPLCs is a technical term from the Nagoya Protocol, which means communities and small businesses, farmers, cooperatives, harvester groups, etc. What we have in South Africa is a bit of a complaint by the IPLCs that their traditional knowledge and their value to the value chain is not understood and not valued. And the private sector says, we don't know who the IPLCs and we don't know how to work with them. So this component here is to bring resources to help the IPLCs to have a structured and assertive role in the value chain and to be able to engage the private sector on a front foot. And component 3, subcomponent 1.3 is to support the increased investment readiness of SMEs in the sector. There are institutions that have funds that would like to support biotrade SMEs, but they find that the level of investment readiness, financial planning, record keeping, this quality of the business plans is poor. And so this component here is to provide technical assistance to improve the flow of investment-ready candidates to other investment parties. Component 2, this is a grant funding mechanism for growth, innovation and growth in the sector. The objective here is to work alongside and with other incentive schemes to bridge the gaps that exist between the different incentive schemes and the needs as expressed by the SMEs in the sector. Component 3 has 3 subcomponents. The first one is to work with the South African government on certain technical aspects of the revision of the relevant legislation, which is the National Environment Management Biodiversity Act and the related regulations, which is the access and biodiversity access and benefit sharing regulations. Component 3.2 is to work with trade associations, business support organizations and councils to develop best practices and to have those best practices better aligned with the outcomes that are expected in the South Africa and the region's development plans, so that the private sector speak much more and act much more in the same direction as what the objectives of the development plans of the countries are. And 3.3 is to support national, regional, and international exchange and networking on lessons learned and making sure that best practices are shared and the troubles that are experienced around the world are shared by stakeholders here. The project is, as I said, 3 million Swiss francs, which is about 36 million rand. And there you can see how the components are split up, and it was a big fight, but to have the lion's share go to component 2, which is the grant facility, which we intend to leverage with other incentive schemes. I'll come to that now. So I won't go through all of this because it will take too long. But basically, South Africa has a rich setup of incentive schemes, particularly by the DTI. But the presidency a few years ago did a review of some key incentive schemes, and they found that they fragmented. There's a lack of business skills, and there's a lack of angel finance, etc., in the system. What we typically have is an investment planning for innovation across from the left to the right. But the reality is the bottom one here, SMEs experience backwards and forwards processes across the innovation chain. So there's a process now to design the grant facility, which I won't go into the details because we have a time problem. It's set up to, it will be set up to work coherently with the other incentive schemes of the South African government. The target is to create jobs, support innovation, new markets, new territories for products from the SMEs. That's the quantum of funding available. We expect to have 24 grants. On average, there'll be 450,000 rands, but they could go up to beyond 1 million, particularly if they're leveraging other resources. The key thing that we are busy doing right now is selecting the value chains that the project will work on. And there are certain criteria, and many stakeholders here will be contacted to participate in that process. The starting point are the species in the Department for Environmental Affairs National Biodiversity Economy Strategy, and we'll be selecting from those. There'll be certain criteria that will be applied to reach certain outcomes. This is just a list of what's going on in the inception phase. Basically, the next steps are to define the value chains and to define the working modalities of the grant facility. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I know you had a very difficult task. I'm sorry about that. Will these presentations be available for anyone who wants them? Okay, fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, that leaves us with one more speaker. The reality is that it is 10 to 10, and the good doctor was given 45 minutes to speak, so he prepared a 45-minute presentation. So we've squeezed in 3 additional speakers this morning, and I think we've done a beautiful job at that. So to be fair to you, Dr. Balak, we will give you 25 minutes. A round of applause for the doctor, please. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you for inviting me for SANBio and Zvi. It's a pleasure to be here. Can you all see me over there? I'm making myself some tea to start off my talk this morning. So what I'm here for essentially is to bring a message to all of you that I mentioned yesterday of how we're going to, as you've already heard in previous talks, build the ecosystem in Southern Africa and in Africa as a whole that will enable the innovation and entrepreneurship that everyone's looking for, and how to become a success in your own ecosystem. And I've come with the blessing of collaborators from around the world to, as I said yesterday, present the way in which we can facilitate you and work together with you to develop the ecosystem. And I will start off also by mentioning, as I said yesterday, this is not easy for any of us. It's not easy in Australia. It's not even easy at Stanford. We face the same difficulties that you do. So I want that to be clear from the beginning. Don't think that you're at a disadvantage or you're facing struggles and challenges that we don't. We do. And that is one of the reasons that we feel the building of a network, not only locally but also internationally, is crucial to all of our success. One moment. So let me start off by continuing the discussion that started yesterday, bring up some points, and then I'd like to open for discussion as quickly as possible. I don't want to turn this into a lengthy lecture. And I won't even show the PowerPoint because of time. The bottlenecks that we talked about included issues like the Valley of Death, what Zvi mentioned about academia and universities not engaging in this process, the issue of young people not finding a way to find themselves in this very complex and very often intimidating world of entrepreneurship with all its rules, regulations, risks, and we're trying to encourage them to enter into this world of risks. We also face a problem in countries like the United States and Australia for our young people. They see many of us, professors like myself, failing to win grants. That we in the world of academia are threatened by the fact that funding is not only poor in Africa, but it's relatively poor in Australia and even the US, where Donald Trump did cut, thanks to Congress though that was reversed, did attempt to cut the NIH budget. So it's become a struggle. So young people see us academics struggling in our normal practice, and then on top of that we're asking them become an entrepreneur and become a success through an even more risk-taking or apparently risk-taking venture. Why in the world go into science? What's the attraction if it's so difficult? And therein lies the conundrum, and the major bottleneck is our young people and even our young researchers are unable and unwilling to go into this area at all. And what we are doing as a community is trying to figure out how can we unleash our young people, how can we unleash ourselves from the burdens that we all have as academics and as people trying to become entrepreneurs. And that's when programs started developing around the world at Stanford, MIT, Harvard, Michigan, in Europe and in Australia, to figure out ways and new paradigms to make it work. And two of the most successful programs happened to start at Stanford in Palo Alto. The first was biodesign. Excuse me. The first is the biodesign program that uses a design thinking approach, particularly to solve issues in biomedical engineering and medical devices. And the other one was the Spark program at Stanford that was dedicated to solving the problem of the development of new drugs. And I would extend that to include indigenous plants and traditional Chinese medicine. The cost today of developing a new molecular entity and registering and bringing to the market for the pharmaceutical industry is estimated to be $4 billion for one drug. That's $4 billion, US dollars. So from a business perspective, it became very unattractive to even go into the field at all and try to develop new drugs. Companies like Pfizer and Merck laid off a lot of their people, and the pipeline started to dry up. Take on top of that the problem of personalized medicine and the unlikelihood we'll see any more blockbuster drugs come onto the market. That is usually drugs that will sell over $1 billion a year of revenue. Again, we're standing in front of a big conundrum of how to develop new drugs, how to develop new antibiotics, who should take the risk, and how we're going to get through this problem. So Stanford did take the approach of developing this Spark program, particularly to solve the drug development issue. And what they were able to do in a relatively short period of time, which is 10 years, and that's one of the other things you should all think about. Programs like SANBio, as good as they are, it's not unsustainable to keep a program only for 3 years and expect results. Most of our discoveries go on for 10, 15, 20 years before you get to the market. So they started working internally and with FDA and everyone else involved and developing an ecosystem to try to streamline drug development, and were very successful in getting their researchers and getting things streamlined to the point that the costs look like they may be coming down to hopefully the point where it may cost $1 billion per drug, if I was to throw out a number. So over time, they've made a lot of advances, and then to make another very long story short, 51 other universities have joined the program from 15 countries around the world to not only help in the development and streamlining and opening the path to drug development, but for medical devices, vaccines, diagnostics, and other health-related endeavors. In coming together as a global community, we realized, as you're realizing, that to make things work, we need a network. A network not only within Africa, but for the whole world. And because we now have representatives from universities from around the world, and the top universities from around the world includes universities like Stanford and Harvard in America, the University of Berlin in Germany, University of Helsinki in Finland, the University of Tel Aviv, Tokyo, and others. And we realized that to open the pipeline that you're trying to open, the only way it's going to happen is if we all work together in an altruistic and respectful way. Respect for each other's cultures, respect for each other's needs, respect for each other's economies. Because from the point of view of our community, we have, in fact, used the phrase scientists without borders to reflect a much more altruistic way of doing medical research, where the focus is on the patient and not on money. And as George Merck said in making Merck such a successful company, was if you focus on the patient, money will follow. If you focus on the money, you will not succeed. And that's part of what has been discussed, understanding your end user and understanding the pathway to get there. And why has Spark been so successful is because of that reason, together with an amazing mentoring process, using mentors largely who were let go from Pfizer and Merck and companies of that type. So, in going back to the name of my talk, Don't Be Afraid to Fail, we have all failed. And in fact, we as a community have failed over the years, and I'm including universities like Stanford and Harvard and my own in Sydney. Our success rate is very poor. Our translation rate, abysmal. The world is starting to lose interest in investing in us. And the only ones who are going to solve the problem is us. We as academics have a social responsibility to solve this problem and to address it together. And what we're offering to you as a community is to work together out of trust. And I think it was Eric Pohl who said yesterday, the most important thing of all is trust and developing that trust. And that's what I'm here to represent. We are bringing to you all the power of all the universities and institutions and countries and governments that have joined together in the global Spark community to work with you to enable you to achieve your goals. For SANBio to continue well beyond 2019, because I think you've been doing an amazing job. And I think you deserve to continue well beyond 2019. And next time I'm in Helsinki, I will say that. I was at the Ministry of Economics in Finland, and they are keen, very keen to continue to support the networking effort needed. For us to get through the pathway of development of a new drug, there is no other way to do it but together. It's too expensive. The amounts of money you're putting in is absurdly small in comparison to the costs. We're talking about each drug needing hundreds of millions of dollars. So that's my basic message. And it's only through trial and continued trying again and again, failing and then trying again, learning from your experience, learning from all of our experience, will we ever succeed in this business. And in the end, it's our responsibility to succeed for the benefit of human health, particularly in Africa, where there are so many problems. I myself worked on malaria for many years, and there still is not a vaccine. And that's only going to happen if we all work together. So let me open to you as a sort of question, what do you see as the issues here in Southern Africa that myself and Zvi and others here can help you with? And let's open a discussion. And I would like to also meet with the students at some point to continue that discussion. How are we going to work together? What do you need? How can we help? How can you help us? So that's my question to you, the audience, and I'm waiting for questions. I'll drink my tea. Or comments. Over there.
If I could start, Professor. My question.
Where are you? Oh, there you are.
My name is Don. I'm an industrialist from Zimbabwe. My question, Prof, is I'm a little bit staggered when you say the problem is bigger than all of you at this stage. You know, from a common man's point of view, you'd think that universities that you mentioned, which are really the top universities in the world today, all the professors there, they are the gurus of information and thoughtfulness, that sort of thing, at the front end research activities for the benefit of the world. And you say that we are failing abysmally. I want to see, I can't quite, I'm sure it's a question of time, you would have gone into it, but where exactly is the problem in that value chain in developing from nothing to a viable drug for the market?
Okay, so the question is, we have the best people in the world in our consortium, and yet we're failing. So one of the reasons for that failure is the fact that our scientific research at Harvard, Stanford, Weizmann Institute is not good enough. That's the message from my counterpart at Stanford. Our level of irreproducibility of our results is somewhere around 70%. So even our top professors, because of the pressure of winning grants, is publishing a lot of poor data. This is a big problem. The reason for this, as I say, is if we want to win a grant in the United States or Australia, we have to produce 5 to 8 papers a year in top journals like Nature and Science. That type of pressure leads to results that are not validated properly. So that's problem number one. We are not doing validation to bring to the end point a product that's going to survive the market. The other thing is the culture. Our professors and our people in universities do not have a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship. They have a culture that, in a sense, diminishes our desire to do entrepreneurship. That is the reason why Zvi found the universities are not engaging. We're interested in papers and attending conferences and winning grants. We don't think about products. Not our top professors, and that's why the Stanford program has been so important. Even people like Stan Cohen of Boyer & Cohen, who started the whole genetic engineering revolution, needed the education. They started genetic engineering and they didn't think about products. They came up with the idea, same thing is true for monoclonal antibodies, who I worked with in the UK. When that idea surfaced, that came out of basic research. Nobody thought monoclonal antibodies were going to become billion-dollar drugs. It's not our mindset. And I worked in industry. I worked at Teva Pharmaceuticals for 9 years. It is a totally different type of research that you do in industry versus what you do in academia. And you have to understand both worlds. And academics shy away from the world of industry. And industry looks down on academia. We have a gap there. And we are looking, and that's why it's so important at Stanford to bring in the Merck and Pfizer people. They criticize the top Stanford academics' research. And they learn from each other. And that's what you need to do here. You have to challenge each other. You have to force each other to do better. Because otherwise, we're not going to develop products. Or very few products. Not enough to justify everything we're trying to do. So our call to you is, join us in improving. I say to everyone, Roger Federer still has a coach. His backhand can still improve. I'm an expert in parasitology. I've been in the field for 40 years. I know very little about parasites. Malaria has completely perplexed us. I don't understand it. And I'm an expert, and I admit that. In fact, my claim to fame now is I admit what I don't know. I admit that I don't understand. And I admit that I need help. And I think that's the key step that I'm making. And my colleagues at Stanford are saying the same. We are in the face of nature that is very difficult to control. We have terrible problems we're facing. H5N1 was causing 60% fatality rates, and we were facing a pandemic. We had no way of stopping. So, and Ebola in Africa, which we could have done better with, we failed. And we should be a bit saying to ourselves, we're not doing well enough. And that's what I'm saying. So that's my personal message to all of you. But I do believe the future is bright because of things like SANBio, Spark, and other initiatives that are forcing us to think more about what are the implications, what's the impact of our research. Not which journal we're going to get into and which conference we're going to be a keynote speaker at. That's the difference. And that is a big change. And that's the paradigm shift I think we're looking for. Question in the back.
Thank you very much, Professor Wallace, for your presentation. My name is Buzana Nitacheva. I come from Botswana Innovation Hub. I happen to be in the business of creating the right networks or building bridges such that innovation can thrive. But that's not an easy task. I acknowledge the fact that you accept the fact that you failed as academics in terms of addressing issues, sort of achieving your societal role. Now, my question, or rather what I think you can help us with, is essentially finding simpler ways of failing, and failing quickly and cheaply. Because I believe that in the context of where we come from, in the Southern Africa region, there's quite a number of knowledge that is not necessarily coming through the conventional academic route, but that is mainly coming out from the traditional grassroots innovation perspective. Knowledge that is coming from from society, from people that have known it for centuries. It really comes down to how is it that you package it to the point where you can be able to, you know, extract and come up with products that can be utilized. So my question to you is, how can you, based on the expertise, the academic expertise, come in and join us in building that framework where we can extract things like indigenous knowledge and sort of conceptualize it into a framework which is essentially proved in terms of, you know, ensuring that that is commercialized in a fair and equitable manner where nobody loses out, where everybody comes out a winner. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. And that's not a question that'll be easy for me to answer in 2 minutes, but let me say this, and let me say one of the goals of Spark and as a community is to do that, exactly that, is to look at projects in a fair and equitable way. And to say, it's often the case, and we've been running now Spark programs around the world for 10 years, and we've been through hundreds of projects, it's not always the best researcher who has the best idea. It's often the case, in fact, some of our worst researchers, in terms of track record and winning grants, have the best ideas. And in competitions that we have to get into our program, I've seen the best pitch horribly and the worst pitch fantastically. The thing is to look at people honestly and truthfully and in the eye and say, as some of the others said, do I trust this person? Do they really have the capability? And we as academics have to work with them, which is what we're doing, to help them over the hurdles that they face, to actually hold their hands practically, so to ensure we give everyone the best chance we can. If they have a new diagnostic tool for breast cancer and it comes out of Africa, fantastic. There is a tendency, though, for the Harvard and MIT guys to say, well, it can't come out of Africa, it has to come out of America. I say, it can come out of Africa. And I would love to see great things come out of Africa and prove to the world that Africa is here to do great things. And I think that this is what SANBio is about. My time is up, is that right? My time is up. So I'll leave you with one last message. And that is, I am here for the rest of the day and into the evening. If anyone wants to meet and continue this discussion, happy to do so. I know I've disrupted things a bit, but that's my goal here. I wanted to wake you up to reality. But the future, I believe, is bright, and the future for Africa is bright, and I'm here to work with you. Thank you.